When Columbus set sail for the Americas for the first time, many people feared that he would sail to the edge of the world and fall off it, right? Well, if you currently still think that medieval society thought that way, you have become victim of a conspiracy dating back to the 17th century, because in reality, society, scholars and even religious institutions during the Dark Ages had a very clear idea of the world being a sphere. Until a combination of ignorance and propaganda changed that. This time in history, the myth of the flat earth. First off, let's get one thing straight here, because this topic might confuse some. Today we're discussing the historically researched and proven myth of the flat earth, which speaks about the historical misconception most people have that until the 19th century people believed the earth was flat. We're not talking about the modern day theory of the flat earth, which states the earth is actually flat. So let's get on with the story. The first clear documentation of a spherical earth dates back over 2000 years. It is known the ancient Greeks generally considered the earth to be round. The first person we know who has made a good attempt of calculating the circumference of the earth was a man by the name of Eratosthenes. Eratosthenes was, like many in ancient Greece, a man of many virtues. He was a mathematician, astronomer, musician, poet, and to top it off, the chief librarian of the Library of Alexandria, which was probably the most important archive of the ancient world. Eratosthenes took on the job of calculating the circumference of the world. He did this by using many different sources he had access to in the library, calculations, and by sending people on foot between various Greek cities. And believe it or not, but his calculations were only off by about 1%. These are the earliest documented versions of the idea of a spherical earth, but it's very possible people theorized about it much earlier, of course. As the ancient society slowly faded and Europe entered the so-called Dark Ages, much knowledge and technology was lost indeed, such as the decline of hygiene and sewage, material usage and other things. But the idea of the spherical earth did not fade at all. The general consensus among scholars and even the church was the idea that the world is round. Yes, even the Catholic Church accepted the fact that the world was round. Proof of this was overwhelming. Just take a look at the statue Beau Dieu, the handsome god, dating back to the 13th century, depicting God with the earth in his left hand. Or the famous Salvator Mundi from the 15th century, or this drawing depicting an eclipse made by Nicolas Oresme, one of the greatest French thinkers of the 14th century, who besides a mathematician, astrologist, economist, physicist, was also counselor to King Charles V. He clearly depicted the earth being round, and no, he was not gruesomely murdered by the church for it. Opposite, he was made bishop and died peacefully in his bisdom of Lisieux. So does it mean that no one thought the world was flat? Not at all. It was a debatable topic, even within church circles, and as far as we know, the Catholic Church has never made big statements about its shape during the Middle Ages. It always referred to scholars, astronomers and scientists, but never made an announcement in its own title. So why do we think the opposite of medieval beliefs? Well, common historical consensus pins the start of this misconception to the 17th century. 1 century earlier, in the year 1517, the theologist Martin Luther nailed 95 theses to the door of a church in Wittenberg in Germany, making the start of a split in the church. More people joined in with the Reformed, also called Protestant, church movement. The story of Reformation is a complex one, but if you're not familiar with it, for now you have to understand that the Reformed people believed that the traditional Catholicism had lost its devotion to God. They found that the gold, money, wine, saint praising and many other facets were against God's will and basically split off to start their own church. To undermine the Catholic Church, it was the Protestants who started the rumor about the flat earthism of the centuries prior. Another important addition to the myth came another 2 centuries later, when several historically incorrect researches were published in a relatively short period of time. One of which was called A History of the Life and Voyages of Christopher Columbus. This so-called research was mostly fictionalized and romanticized, and its original source of the idea, people around Columbus warned him for the idea that he would sail right off the edge of the world. Later research has shown that it was not the shape of the earth, but its size that was the biggest concern regarding Columbus' trips. Documents show that the consensus was that sailing westwards, Columbus would eventually reach Asia, but conservative scholars were afraid that the ships of the time would not be suitable for such a long journey, as by their calculation the world would have been about 30% larger than it actually is. The 1800s, furthermore, was a time of scientific advocacy. The idea that the church had to be separated from state and science became more and more important. Scientists, therefore, drew benefit from painting this idea of an anti-scientific church in the general consensus. Lastly, the troublesome relationship between the church and heliocentrism, the idea that the sun, not the earth, is at the center of our solar system, also attributes to the idea. The Catholic Church banned many works during the Middle Ages, among which the books of Nicholas Copernicus, who presented his view of a heliocentric universe in the book De Revolutionibus Orbium Coelestium, which was banned for over 200 years. So in conclusion, no. Most people throughout near history did not think the world was flat. This idea rather stems from efforts by the Protestant and scientific community to spread the idea, either by ignorance or by effort. If you like this video, feel free to subscribe, and I'll see you next time in history.